right with you. It ends right here. Where does it end? Here, grab it. Sorry, just getting organized.
Right at the tab, I think.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Well, good morning. And I have here my Chief Deputy, LARA Hall. And I'm sure you know my Ledge folks. I'm very happy to be supported by them. They're my phone a friend, or they'll stand up if I say something incorrect and correct me. So we're all good. Well, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to present on the DIFS 2027 budget request. My usual beginning reminder, we are fee-funded, which means we do not require tax dollars to operate. But I assure you, as I do every year, whether we're using tax dollars, restricted funds, we take a responsibility to be good stewards of the money very seriously. We try to use our resources in the best way to protect and serve Michigan consumers. This is Governor Whitmer's 8th and final executive budget recommendation, and it builds on Michigan's long-term priorities to deliver lasting results for Michiganders. We know that there's a lot of, I would say, economic uncertainty right now, driven by tariffs, federal cuts to programs like Medicaid and SNAP, and yet the FY27 budget lowers costs, protects access to health care, and helps more families live and work in Michigan while maintaining a balanced, fiscally responsible approach. It builds on a strong record of bipartisan progress to address the issues that matter most. It supports good-paying jobs, fixes roads, strengthens public safety, and ensures that every child can eat, read, and succeed, and keeping Michigan open for business and moving forward. DIFS budget supports the department's efforts to ensure that every Michigander has access to insurance that meets their needs and budgets, and that they can rely on during critical moments, as well as safe and secure financial services projects. So I just want to brag about my staff for a couple of minutes. Our staff operates in an efficient, results-driven manner to deliver for Michiganders while providing high-quality support to the industries our department regulates. Since 2019, our department has implemented bipartisan auto no-fault insurance reform, completed more than 1,700 investigations and market conduct examinations, resulting in nearly $16 million being returned to 2.9 million customers. We've worked to codify the cost-saving provisions of the Affordable Care Act into Michigan state law and protect health care for millions of Michiganders. We launched the Michigan Open Account Coalition to expand access to low-cost and transparent bank and credit union accounts to get those who are not banked or underbanked banked so that they can have full participation in our economic system. We answered more than 780,000 calls from consumers and processed 53,000 consumer complaints. I'll go into more depth on what work our Office of Consumer Services does, because it's an important part of how we directly serve consumers in Michigan. I just want to touch briefly on our mission statement. I revised this when I got to the department, and we've tried to stand by it all the years that I've been here. So I want to give you a brief overview. Our fundamental part of our mission is obviously to ensure access to safe and sound insurance and financial services sectors, because we know these are fundamental to the opportunity, security, and success of Michigan residents. But we also added this last line here to make sure that we're fostering economic growth and sustainability in these industries. They're important to our economy, they're important for jobs, and they're important to make sure that our communities are drivers of innovation and economic change for our residents. Our department provides consumer protection, outreach, and education services to Michigan residents, because we know that every single Michigander is impacted by the products we regulate, and we use consumer protection as our guiding principle. Just to give you a brief overview, we regulate insurance companies, state-chartered financial institutions, and consumer finance entities. We'll get into details a little later, but here's just a list of kind of the entities that we regulate. Where do we get our authority? The statutes that you passed. In addition to the Michigan Insurance Code, there are 19 other primary statutes that govern the work we do in the insurance sector. This is just a list, and I promise not to read them to you, of all the state statutes that we operate under. in addition to several dozen federal statutes that also impact our authority. On the financial services side, in addition to the Michigan Banking Code and the Credit Union Act, we have 18 other primary state statutes that govern consumer finance, lending, and financial institutions. If I were to broadly summarize our work, I would kind of use this diagram to show that when we monitor the financial conditions, that's our solvency, we also work to ensure that entities operate in compliance with applicable statutes, and we ensure consumers are protected. I thought it might be interesting for you to see, as we do every year, just to keep a pattern here of what's happening in the industries that we regulate. Again, we have seen a lot of growth in the industries we regulate, which is good for consumers and our economy as a whole. And in this slide, you can see the growth of our competitive insurance market. One way we can measure how our insurance market is doing is by tracking total premiums in the state. And as you can see from this, we have had an over 13% growth in this area of our economy. We've also seen a surge in the number of insurance producers, agents licensed in this state. Since 2014, if you look at that graph, we're about 114% up on the number of people engaged in these professions. That means more jobs for Michiganders, and Michiganders have more options if they need to find an agent in their community. As we continue to see growth in this area, we know that industry depends on the department to use the fees that are assessed to them to keep pace with this growth so we can issue licenses, complete audits, and review transactions in a professional and timely manner. And just to touch base on this for 1 second, one of the reasons that we do the examinations and audits we do is to maintain accreditation. All of our areas are accredited by their national organizations, which is an important part. It makes the federal governments that we co-regulate with respect our audits so that there aren't double audits for a lot of these businesses. And our industries really support our accreditation and working with us to make sure that we are keeping our programs efficient and well-staffed so that we get in, we get out, and we also are able to maintain our accreditation, which is so important to our businesses that do business inside and outside the state. So similar to the insurance industry, the financial services industries that we regulate are growing in Michigan. Total bank assets under our supervision have grown 55% since 2019, and total credit union assets have grown 76% in the same period. The total number of money transmission licenses has increased 25% over the last 4 years. And so on a whole, we continue to see growth in the industries that we regulate, which is good for Michigan. I thought it would also be good to touch on our budgetary authority. DIFS was established as a separate department in 2013, and since that time, our budget has remained relatively steady. As I mentioned, we're fee-funded, but if you look at those green boxes, those are the years in which we've had some general fund dollars allocated for special statewide projects. For example, what you see in 2014, there's the Autism Fund. 2021, you see a bump there, that was the Provider Relief Fund. And any funds that were not used for those efforts are returned to the general fund. Most of our fees are set by statute, either with a specific amount written into law or through formulas that grant us limited authority to determine the exact fee. Where we do have discretion, we work diligently to keep costs low for our regulated entities and competitive with other states and other regulatory bodies. Additionally, our restricted funds were created in statute with requirements on how we can use those revenues. Fees are tied to specific funds, and we're required to maintain fund balances that are adequate but not excessive. When reviewing and projecting revenue needs, we account for the requirement to maintain certain fund balances as part of various accreditations, as I mentioned, which are an important component of our state-based system of regulation. This ensures that Michigan remains an attractive and competitive place to do business. Another measure that you might be interested in is history of our FTEs in fiscals 2014, the year after we were formed, and to 2027. This is our historical budgeted FTE count. Relatively consistent over time. You'll see that there was a 5 or 6 year period where we didn't add a single FTE. Well, as you know from the prior graphs, our industries were growing within Michigan. Incremental FTE growth that you see is in response to additional responsibilities that we have been gifted by the legislature, so thanks for that, and the significant growth of the industries that we oversee. Switching gears for a moment, I just want to say that we had a pleasure working with you on this, Rep. Beeson and Reps. McKinney and Steele, last year on DIFS, and we're happy to report on where we maintained our programs and oversaw the budget that you entrusted to us. You saw our hardworking and dedicated staff in action on the 3 floors of the Mason Building when you came to visit, and we're committed to prioritizing in-person work. The majority of DIFS employees have in-person requirements in their roles. Those who don't, we were very specific to the functions that they had and space requirements. We really want to stay in one building. It's efficient and it's better for morale. And so that's how we looked at roughly 1/3 of our workforce has always been in the field. These are like bank examiners and credit unions and other financial institution and insurance company regulators that live and work in the communities that they regulate. It's more efficient and really gives them a handle on what's actually happening in those community institutions. That was the case prior to 2020 and remains the case today. For Lansing-based employees with hybrid schedules, our policy prioritizes operational needs first and foremost, employees' job functions, and work performance. And we take that all into account in determining the privilege to have a hybrid schedule. Shifting to FY 2027, the executive recommendation reflects a calculated approach to improving our functions by making us more efficient and responsive to consumers and our markets. We are requesting 3 new FTEs be funded out of our fees to use an additional $2.9 million in fee-funded dollars. This reflects $1.4 million in increased contractual costs associated with the maintenance and support of the deferred presentment database system, and I'll get into this, over $1 million for employee payroll adjustments and other administrative costs which we're required to include, such as mandatory adjustments established by the Michigan Civil Service Commission. And then we're asking for $466,000 to be allocated to support these 3 new FTEs. So let me talk first about the deferred presentment database contract. This is the $1.4 million request to use state restricted funds to support the contractual costs for the operation and maintenance of the current deferred presentment database system, which is called Catalyst, and in particular to reflect increased costs since the contract was entered into 20 years ago. The database tracks consumer activity per requirements of statute to develop, implement, and maintain a statewide common database that has real-time access to an internet connection that is accessible at all times to both licensees and the department. Under the statute, licensees are required to use this system to ensure that no Michigan consumer has more than 2 transactions open at any given time or more than 1 with a single licensee. The department also uses it in our regulatory oversight of the deferred presentment or payday lending industry. The previous contract was in place for more than 20 years and required an update through the official DTMB procurement process. As part of the process, the vendor submitted a price increase to align with current market standards, as there had been a significant adjustment in 2 decades. This new 5-year contract took effect in September 2025. The increased cost is due to a higher transaction fee, which is currently in effect. This fee is collected by DIFS to allow for necessary auditing before payment is remitted to the vendor. In other words, whenever we use a third-party payment system, we want to make sure that we have oversight of how those funds are actually being used. This budget request actually represents 100% pass-through of the revenue to the vendor for supporting and maintaining the database. We're also submitting an FY26 supplemental request for $1.4 million for the same support. Now next, the next FTT we're asking is in our PRIRO, which is our Patient's Right to Independent Review Appeals section. This provides consumers with a review of certain health insurance claim denials. We know this is very important to Michiganders and to consumers across the country. And under this program, DIFS offers free assistance to review these cases with the help of independent outside medical experts to ensure Michiganders receive the medically necessary care to which they're entitled. Right now, that section is comprised of 1 manager, 1 specialist, and 3 analysts. I hope you're aware that last year, the legislature directed DIFS to launch a public service awareness campaign to explain what PRIRA is and how Michiganders can use this service. We are really proud of an award-winning campaign that we launched and were rewarded with this award to recognize that we had over 1.3 million impressions across our social media platforms, over 3 million digital advertising impressions, 5.4 million impressions via billboards, and over 16,000 new users in our michigan.gov/health insurance appeals page. Through this campaign and our outreach efforts, we are pleased to see more Michiganders are using this service, more than doubling since 2020. This continued growth is why we are requesting 1 additional FTE, a departmental analyst, within our PRIRA section. It is critical that this section has the staffing needed to ensure timely and accurate reviews of orders, including emergency appeals involving cases that could jeopardize a patient's life, health, or the ability to regain maximum function. The next FTE is for 1 FTE for the Office of Insurance Rates and Forms, which is responsible for collecting and analyzing insurance data for regulatory reviews, reporting, and investigations. As technology continues to advance, filings are becoming more and more complex. This section is also responsible for staying abreast of innovations and working with regulators across the country to understand new developments and maintain strong oversight over rate making. In addition to these responsibilities, OIRF provides data-driven insights to support compliance, market oversight, and emerging industry trends. You can see from this chart, the number of filings handled by this office has remained constant over the years, but the needed additional support reflects the need to monitor market trends, address technological changes, and respond to statutory reporting requirements regarding insurance filings. The FTE would be used to establish our first and only data analyst position, who would serve a critical role in our data-driven regulatory efforts. This role improves our operational efficiency and strengthens coordination with companies that maintain similar data and analyst positions. This practical, innovative improvement would provide us the means to analyze varied and increasingly complex data sets quicker, which could benefit both industry and consumers, which are the core priorities of our department. The final FTE is for our Consumer Services Office. This handles consumer complaints, inquiries, legislative inquiries, and the like. There are currently 4 complaint analysts in this unit. The office is responsible for both insurance and financial services, and the FTE is needed due to the growth in the number and complexity of the complaints DIFS receives regarding Michiganders' financial services. Since 2022, consumer finance-related complaints have increased more than 23%. As Michiganders face economic pressures, this additional position will help us to assist consumers dealing with a concern involving financial services. These complaints can be complex. They're all very individualized. And for example, assisting a consumer with fraud case, payment issues on a mortgage, or repossession matters. As more Michiganders learn about the free service offered by DIFS and how we can assist them, it is important that the Office of Consumer Services remains properly staffed to deliver the highest level of customer service. So I'd like to talk a little bit about this office, because this is the office that directly interacts with consumers and your constituent services in your office. This office is responsible for providing several free services to support Michiganders with their insurance and financial services, including our newly established outreach program, the life insurance and annuity search service, which helps Michiganders locate lost life insurance benefits, our complaint process, which helps consumers resolve questions and concerns related to their insurance and financial services, hopefully quicker and without the cost of litigation. We accept complaints online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we're one of the few departments that operates a live call center Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. When consumers call, they speak directly with a real person, not an automated system. And then we try and funnel them to subject matter experts who can actually deal with the complex questions that they bring to us. We know that insurance and financial services can be complicated for consumers, and we provide the support when they need it. The Office of Consumer Services is comprised of teams that handle insurance complaints and also consumer finance-related complaints. The process gives this potential for resolution in an efficient way and without delay. Although under state law, our Office of Consumer Services cannot adjudicate complaints or require a licensee to take action, if we suspect a violation of state law or regulations, we then send that over to a different unit that can look into whether there's further investigation or possible enforcement warranted. When disagreements about facts cannot be resolved through our informal complaint process, those issues are typically addressed through the legal system, which consumers maintain the right to use even when they use our free service. We have had the goal to grow the number of complaints. I know that's an odd statistic that you want more complaints to come into your office, but what that means we have increased visibility. And we saw that there's a lot of angst among consumers across the country, especially if you look like in the healthcare. People feel like they're not heard, and they don't have, the insurance companies are big and they don't have anybody to help them. And people have turned to violence. And we want to offer a way to bring down the temperature. You can have a voluntary complaint process. You can have someone look at it for you. You can go through our free appeal process. That there are ways that if you are really concerned about how your health insurance claim is being handled, you have somewhere to go to get a professional review. We've helped Michiganders through this services recover millions of dollars each year. And in recent years, we have worked with Chair Beeson and other partners in the legislature to continue to enhance the support we are providing to Michiganders and expand our outreach efforts. Under the fiscal 25 budget, per legislative requirement, we hired an outreach coordinator who is focused on being out in the communities across our state to explain what DIFS is and how we can help Michiganders free of charge. In just the first year of establishing this program, our outreach coordinator participated in events across the state, directly reaching more than 4,000 consumers, and our goal is to expand that in 2026 and beyond. We're also reaching consumers through our online and social media channels, averaging 300,000 impressions, 5,700 video views, and 10,000 social media engagements each year. So again, if you feel free to direct your constituents to us, to our hotline where they can call Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. We even have a special separate number, easy to remember, for those consumers who have auto insurance questions at 833-ASK-DIFS. In 2025, DIFS answered more than 126,000 phone calls. And since 2019, we've processed more than 53,000 complaints. In 2025, just to kind of focus back on the most recent year, we received and processed more than 10,000 complaints and nearly 3,000 written requests for assistance. Just if you're interested in the breakdown, about 8,800 of those were in insurance, and the remaining 1,300 relating to financial institutions. Written requests for assistance can include consumer emails and requests for consumer assistance referred from another department. And when we do receive a written request, we contact the consumer, usually the same day, unless it's very late in the day, and otherwise first thing in the morning, and offer the opportunity to file a formal complaint. Formal complaints are cases where the consumer agrees to let DIFS take action on their behalf with the insurance or financial services company or licensee. When we get a complaint, we contact the licensee and we say, here's the concerns we've heard. We ask you to try and address those concerns. That usually happens the same day or the next business day. They're very individualized. We will actually look at a consumer's bill, ask the insurance company, for example, to explain the premium increase or explain the contraction in coverage, and try and work to get a timely response. Specific to auto insurance companies, DIFS established a process to quickly address access to care complaints for auto accident victims. We require insurers to identify a particular person, not just the claims person on each individual claim, but a company person that we can call, and requiring them to reach out within 48 hours to an injured party to resolve any access to care issues. We also set up a similar process where providers weren't being paid in a timely manner. As we work through the complaint process, our goal is to ensure that the insurance company agrees to fund the care with a plan that accounts for 100% of the medically appropriate care up to the limits of the policy, and that's when we consider a complaint to be resolved. We also try and be responsive to your offices as you deal with consumers. We processed 381 legislative inquiries in 2025. These inquiries involve, excuse me, constituent matters concerning auto insurance and financial services, including homeowners claims, auto insurance claims, no fault, Medicare, claims under Medicare HMOs, lending and servicing concerns, mortgage resources, questions about who's licensed, and many others. We also have speakers available for your virtual and in-person events and provide toolkits, which I hope your offices are making use of, where we'll send on a particular topic like spoofing. When people get a call, it looks like it's coming from their financial institution, we send it to your office as a kit that you can, plug in your own picture, plug in your own things, put them in your newsletters, put them up on your social media to help get the word out to consumers. I mentioned that we also work to recover money for Michiganders. Last year, we helped your constituents recover over $30 million in recoveries. A recovery can include assisting a consumer to obtain a premium refund. Refunds are fees or overcharges from a bank or credit union, payment of a previously denied life insurance or homeowner's claim, and everything in between. I'll finish up this with some reminders of the resources we have available on our website. We have consumer information, publications, legal actions, access to statutes, bulletins, and several reports. We'll also mail the regular snail mail to people who aren't computer gauged. If they call our office and want more information, we will mail out brochures and other information to your constituents. We also remind you we can be found on social media on all these platforms to get our messages out, and we're working hard also to partner with statewide organizations, AARP and other things, because we know we don't have a good database of consumers. Our database is filled with producers and banks and credit unions, and not the people we actually serve, and so we have to work hard to get our message out, and that's why our engagement with your offices is so important. Our engagement with these statewide institutions is so important, and using every tool that we can. Social media is good because of the cost. Is that my clue? I'm done. I'll switch over quickly. This is our contact information. I hope these are...
No, that's not your clue. Apparently, the LARA and DIFS
All
want
right,
to push you
just
along. It's
dying
okay.
to
It's
get up
okay.
here. They're like, get the hook, get the hook. The music was going to come on. But here's our contact information. I hope you have some of these folks on speed dial already. We want to engage with you. Again, your constituents or our constituents. We want to serve the public, and our folks are really dedicated to the consumer side of our job. And we're always happy to answer questions for you and your constituents. And with that, I will also be happy to take your questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Do you have any questions? I know. Go ahead. Rep. McKinney?
Hey, thank you, Chair Beeson. Thank you, Director Fox, for being here and presenting.
Thank you for being here, because I bet you're a little sleep deprived.
Yeah, 3 kiddos under the age of 4. It's crazy. Bless my wife, for allowing me to do this.
Yeah, I'll ask her if the baby's sleeping through the night.
Yeah, exactly.
She'll probably say yes, and she'll say no.
No, we're up. It's crazy. But I have 3 questions, if that's okay with the chairman. I feel like, our other colleagues are somewhere else, so.
You can have the
I
question.
have some latitude from the chairman. I appreciate it. My first question is, you mentioned, I think going back to the slide of consumer finance related complaints, it's up by 23% since 2022. Is that right? Did you say that? Or did I mishear? I'm sorry.
Let's take a quick look. Yeah, that's correct.
And I know with the rise of fintech, AI, crypto, there's so many scams out here that are happening to our constituents. And so can you talk about, why is it up 23%? I know you guys are doing what you can in terms of the visibility, promotion, advertising, making sure people know that you guys exist and they can call. But what is leading to that rise? What is the root cause? Is it because of that, or
So one
it's
thing I
because
would say,
something else?
there's economic pressures, right? When scammers come out, when they're looking for a quick way to make a buck, and they see opportunity. And I will tell you, Michigan is not alone here. I deal with my state counterparts across the country. It is a lot of what you identify. There's these scams. It's so easy to now, like, you don't have to, like, break into someone's house now to get their money, right? You can get online, you can, and it's not just hacking. So you'll have some things about where people actually give out their information. They don't understand, they think it's the bank, they think it's that. We had a bunch of those kinds of things. You'll have ones where, they click on a phishing email, and boom, someone's into their stuff. Some of it is just a non-understanding. And one of the things we're working with our financial institutions is we've been in a era of low interest rates, right? So nobody would get any other kind of mortgage except a fixed 30-year mortgage at a low interest rate. You lock yourself in. But as interest rates rise, you're going to see more alternative funding things, where adjustable rate mortgages and balloons. Those are always going to lead to consumer confusion, right? Because people don't understand. They go in and they'll say, like, I can lower your monthly payment and all those things. And then, or I'm not going to be in my house for 5 years. On year 6, it goes up and they're like, what happened? So we're really working hard on both ends, getting that education out in the beginning and telling them, like, it's your interest, financial institution, to make sure people understand this, because they're going to be calling you and me when the rate goes up. So you'll see some of that. It's just really a lot of mix of things. People wanting to rely more. There are some people who are relying more on payday lending. Like, if you don't have other access to money, and when you get in there, they'll be frustrated. They think they didn't clear me out and I need another one, and they're saying I already have 2, and those kind of things, trying to help people through some of those things. People from our trying to understand overdraft fees, and people trying to understand, what happened to my money? I didn't know. And that's why we launched this Michigan Open Account Coalition, because we realized that a lot of people were worried that if they put their money in a bank or credit union, that there'd be these fees, and that money that they need for rent or utilities is gone with one swoop. So these accounts, tell you, there are going to be no overdraft fees. They're going to be a no monthly balance, low balance things. Got to be a low monthly balance and a fee no more than a set amount. ATM transactions at a set amount, so you know what you have getting in. The federal government isn't going to do tax refunds by check anymore. So that's another thing. We're like, you've got to get an account where you can get your tax refund. People rely on that cash coming in. It's funny, they don't really understand a little bit, but it's almost like a forced savings account for a lot of people, and they count on that in the spring for whatever the expenses they have. So those are the kind of things we handle, and as things become more complex, as scammers run wild, we're going to see more of those complaints. It's just a fact.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And right now we're getting inundated with calls around state tax returns.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, B.
And then
yeah.
also, if you ever look for a better loan than what your bank is getting you, and you fill out the first one online, it's a nightmare. It becomes
true.
Every phone that you've actually called, and all the back phones, anything related to your business. I'm like,
Absolutely.
the biggest mistake ever. And then don't ever do that, because maybe there's a great program out there, but I got to tell you, it's and that's what the calls that we're getting is the people that are doing this, and then they're like, how do you make it stop? And I don't know how we make it stop.
Yeah, I know there are some folks looking at how you can regulate robocalls and other things, a little outside of my wheelhouse. But too much information can be a bad thing. It's confusing to consumers. It's predatory. And I can tell you, my licensees worry about that. They've got a mortgage. They're sitting down, and then as they're there, the person is literally getting a text saying, "Don't sign. I can do better," and it may or may not be real. So.
That makes sense. And then to go on my other line of questioning, you talked about, I was shocked when the slide that said 126,266 phone calls answered just last year by your department. That is a crazy number to me. I'm happy to hear that you guys are fielding all those calls, but it's just sad because everybody needs so much more help. And so how do you guys have a breakdown of categoricals? I know you talked about consumer protection, but then what about how much of it is healthcare related? Because our office got inundated with calls earlier around the changes of HR1 and people are worried about losing their health care and everything, and having that access is key.
We do break it down that way,
Okay.
and we can provide that to you.
Okay.
But we try and track it, because we need to know, that we have the right staffing, are the people that on the phone educated enough in the things. We certainly saw an increase in concern as, the federal government was changing ACA, and we work every year to, with the HHS and others to try and get the word out about enrollment and enrollment state changes, and we also do Medicare HMOs, and so getting those deadlines before people, and people are confused about those things. So our calls include just getting information to people as well as complaints. People just need this information, and these are complex subjects, but even for sophisticated consumers, financial services and insurance are confusing, and we have to try and figure out a way to break it down so that people understand.
Yeah. And then my last question would be around auto insurance. I ask you this every time, and I appreciate you guys' work and focus on this. I know you guys put out a report recently around it, and I know it's broke down by county. Can we get the numbers broke down by cities if possible?
So
'Cause
we don't
yeah.
actually maintain the information at a consumer level, right? We're
Okay.
looking at filings. So we engaged a consultant at the direction of the legislature, and that consultant did what they could to collect the data that they thought was available and that could best answer those questions. The companies have that, but they're competitive, right? They don't want to exactly give up everything. I don't know if they can do it by city. I know that when Milliman collected data, they thought the county level was the best that they could do. I will tell you a couple things that I appreciated about that report. It's not perfect, and it's difficult. Some of that information is difficult to get, but it did show some things that I thought were positive in Wayne County. That there was an average PIP reduction of $539 per vehicle. I think you'll see, because these are percentages that you required in the law, people are paying more, are going to get more of a decrease, so I think it will be more Detroit-centered. I mean, this is obviously a huge issue everywhere that has an urban center, where there's more traffic, more higher costs. And I've talked to you about this, is, no state has a statewide rate. They're all rated by territories, and it's that balance between, we want the rates to reflect the actual risk, we see people going through telematics and all those things because they want to be able to control it. But the flip side of that is, if you live in an area with higher costs, you're going to inherit those costs, even if you're a great driver, right? Even if you've never had anything, you're inheriting sort of that, and that's a difficult thing. It's the road funding, like the people who have a lot of roads but not many people driving on it, the areas where you got a lot of people driving on less roads, and how are you fair about funding those things? And we strive to bring down costs in an environment where they're rising everywhere. Electronics in cars, just all of the things, the supply chain, the amount of time it takes to get a vehicle repaired, bring up costs. At the same time, we also have the most generous benefits of any state in the union, and that's going to cost money. So where is the sweet spot? And so you gave some choice, let people have some say over how much limits they want and to reduce their costs and the like, but it's far from perfect. I know people struggle to pay those bills.
Yeah, I just want to tackle make the rates more affordable so more people can get insurance. There's a lot of uninsured folks on the roads, and it's just unattainable. It's unaffordable, and I don't know what we can do to change that. And this has been happening for decades. I know long before you became director. But whatever we have to do, I'm willing to work with you. I'm willing to work with the chairman. We have to lower these insurance rates immediately.
Yeah, what you took aim at was PIP. So we start with that. Those medical costs, they were driving a lot of them, and there have been inroads in there. the courts have kind of cut back on some of those and some of those savings and trying to find that. And you know, we take the responsibility of making sure that everybody gets the care that they deserve and that they paid for really seriously. So it's a dual role for us. We care about the cost, but we care about the care. And that is a tough spot to find. But we're seeing collision and bodily injury. You know, you raise the bodily injury limits, and that's going to cost more, but there have been more bodily injury claims. And they're going to, you know, the way that insurance works is the more claims and the more costs, the more our premiums are going to rise. And not an excuse, but we're seeing it across the whole country. And we talk about every single day about what we can do, what other states are doing, how can we innovate, are there things we can do to keep these costs down, because we understand what you're saying. We want every driver to be able to afford insurance.
Thank you.
Director, did maybe your department put something in law? Because we're getting a lot of calls that people are filling out to ask if they have health insurance for their, and did you guys do that, or did we do that? Because that's kind of all of a sudden turned to a big deal, and people are hey, what are you doing about this, and how do we fix this, and why are they even asking about this? And I want to hear.
Okay, so you did something, but some insurance companies are doing something that you didn't do. So let me explain it this way. So, yeah, you got that one? Did you follow that? Okay, so one of the things you did when you did the auto insurance reform is you said that in order to help people have choices and keep costs down, you can opt out of the medical portion of your coverage under your auto policy if you choose, and if you're on Medicare, you can choose to rely on Medicare and not on PIP. And when you do that, some things kick in. So if you have qualified health coverage as you defined under the law, you can opt out. But you have to have some kind of verification, because if the insurance company, the auto insurance company, doesn't know that you actually have health insurance, and you click the box and say, I'd like to opt out, I have health insurance, and you don't, then you're not having medical coverage under your auto policy, and you have no health insurance. Now you get in an accident and nobody has any coverage for their medical bills for that. So that's intended to make sure that only those who qualify for opting out. Now, we are aware that there are some companies that were asking for health insurance even in instances where it wasn't an opt-out. And we have heard complaints about that, and that's a different story that we're looking into and that we will address. But there is a role for knowing what your health, and we tried to work with it. I don't have the authority over every single health insurance company in Michigan. I have those which aren't regulated by the federal government, right? Like if you work for a big employer like the state of Michigan or GM, you're regulated by the federal government. But we still found ways to work with those companies to help consumers get those letters showing they have the health coverage. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, except for the age. Some of them are on Medicaid at a certain age, or Medicare at a certain age, you get kicked off your health insurance.
You're talking about the things you read in the paper about age and
Yeah,
listing your people? Yeah, that's a different question. May I help you with that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Because that's I got a
Yes.
few of those. I'm like, I'm retired. I'm like, why are they asking this? I'm like, you know what? This is great. I will actually ask the director this week.
Okay, so Medicare, let me just talk about the older folks. Medicare is always the payer of last resort. Like that's what they always say. And we were fortunate to be able to get them to agree that if you opt out, we're still gonna let you rely on your Medicare here, and we're not gonna say, hey, you should be responsible. You chose not to buy that. We're still the last resort. And so that was a big step. We got a lot of calls before you changed the law where people would say, like, I turned 65, I get Medicare, and my bill went up $600 because you couldn't coordinate anymore. Medicare said, we're last, and so your auto insurance first, and that hit your rates. What you're hearing about with ages of children, you're hearing about those 2-year-olds or whatever that weren't on the policy. One of the things that an insurer can rate on under the law is how many people live in your household, and why is that? Because every one of them can claim medical benefits under your policy. So it's a public policy question for folks like you to say, if you've got 6 kids and your mother-in-law living with everyone, what's your household? Should that be baked into your rate so that if I am a single person or a retired couple My rate reflects that I don't have that many people in my household, but somebody who has a lot pays more because they have more people who could make medical claims. There's another rating that you allow for drivers, how many licensed drivers you have, because that increases risk. But there is a separate part in the law, and I think it's pretty standard, that you can rate on how many people can claim medical coverage under your policy. But I think the public needs to understand that, makers need to understand that, so you can decide what do you want the law to say in that regard, and how do you want to allocate the premiums between those different risk categories. Do you want everyone to kind of pay, should we take that out of the rating or leave it in like you have it now? That's a policy, and however you do it, we will implement that. But we will also work to make sure that it's applied fairly, that consumers understand it, that if it is a rating impact, you know, and if it's not a rating impact, then you shouldn't be asking. And that's where we're kind of coming down. But that's the reason, is because they're medical costs for those children, even if they don't drive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, do you have any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for being here today. Sorry we had this one going, this one's coming in, this next one's coming back, so thank you very much. We appreciate it.
We appreciate that you're here. Thank you. I'll soften him up.
Okay, next chair calls up Marion Brown, Director. It looks like Dan, and Dan Horner, your Chief Financial Officer, was going to give you your presentation. Thank you for being here, Director.
Thank you.
And remember, we are only, just so you know, we're not being recorded just for your voice, so if you have to make some, you won't be on any camera.
No hand motions with
Yeah,
our.
yeah, so nobody's going to be critical of you or your family members like they do mine. You're like, you're doing something wrong, slouch it. You know what I'm talking about. We appreciate it.
Well, good morning, Chair Beeson. Good morning to Majority Vice Chair Seal and absentia, and also to Minority Vice Chair McKinney, and to the other members of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, as well as Insurance and Financial Services. Again, my name is Marlon Brown, and it is my honor to serve as the Director of the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. And co-presenting with me this morning is Mr. Dan Horn, who is the Director of our Finance and Administrative Services Bureau. I'm also pleased to be joined by several members of our leadership team, including Courtney Pendleton, our Chief Operating Officer, and Paige Foltz, our Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs, and several other members within our Office of Communications, our FAS Bureau, and our Director's Office that all wanted to be here today to see this process in action. I want to begin, Mr. Chair and committee members, by thanking you for your continued partnership and support of our department. By working together, we have had and will continue to have a positive and meaningful impact on the lives of our fellow Michiganders. Now, every year, our team endeavors to identify a word that will help guide and sharpen our focus for the year. So in 2024, our focus was on excellence, which challenged us to think beyond individual tasks and move toward working with balance, with connection, strength, and care for those that we serve. In 2025, we embraced growth as our focus, which encouraged us to invest in what matters most, including our people, our systems, and how we continue to strengthen the way in which we work. For 2026, our word of the year is impact, which reflects the positive effect that our work has on people, on businesses, and communities across Michigan. Positive impact is felt when we deliver results that are thoughtful, responsible, and people-focused. And as a result, our daily work produces lasting meaning and value for all Michiganders. So today's presentation is built around that idea of impact, not just the work that LARA performs, but the outcomes experienced because of that work. The fiscal year 2027 executive budget incorporates thoughtful investments in people, systems, and oversight, which will translate into safer communities, stronger consumer protection, and more effective and efficient government services statewide. Now, even though the information might be familiar, I would like to offer a brief refresher on the role that our department plays within state government. LARA serves as Michigan's principal regulatory agency with programs and services that impact every Michigander. We license and regulate nearly 2 million individuals and entities across areas including professional licensing, health systems, construction and fire safety, utilities, cannabis, liquor control, and indigent defense. We also house several independent agencies, including the Michigan Tax Tribunal, the State Fire Marshal, and the Michigan Office of Administrative Hearings and Rules, and last but certainly not least, the state's Unarmed Combat Commission. With more than 1,800 appropriated FTEs, our work is grounded in public service. Effective regulation is not just about enforcement. It is also about protecting people, supporting businesses, and ensuring a strong quality of life across our state. LARA's organizational structure is intentionally designed to support the specialized nature of our regulatory work, while also promoting consistency and accountability within a large agency. Our regulatory bureaus provide services and subject matter expertise for the vast majority of occupational and professional licensees. Our independent agencies represent specialized industries with distinct statutory structures and responsibilities, and our central services teams ensure operational excellence throughout the entire department. With 20 different bureaus, commissions, and offices, LARA administers a broad range of regulatory functions which deliver statewide impact. Now, you've probably heard me state our mission, vision, and values before. So rather than reading what is on this slide, I want to share how these principles guide our decisions and ultimately our work. In 2019, LARA went through a significant reorganization, which provided ample opportunity to recalibrate our purpose and direction as a state department. Our renewed mission, vision, and values were informed by and continue to shape how we balance access with oversight, how we balance efficiency with accountability, and how we balance innovation with public safety. Now, when we talk about impact, this is exactly where it starts. Every program, every policy decision, and every budget request is evaluated through the lens of protecting people, promoting business, and serving Michiganders with transparency and accessibility. And I'd like to say a brief word about public service, which is one of LARA's core values. At our last leadership retreat, we had a heartfelt discussion about how public servants are simply real people who are trying to help real people. At the end of the day, that is one of the most beautiful things about public service. We may be imperfect people, and we may be working through imperfect processes, but nevertheless, we are all striving to build a Michigan for all, where everyone can thrive and flourish. We're working toward what John Lewis called that beloved community. Public service is the foundation of everything that we do at LARA, and my challenge is for all of us to recognize the value that public service brings to our daily lives. And rather than vilifying and degrading public service, let's uphold and uplift those who pursue this noble vocation. Because a Michigan for all requires dedicated and talented public servants, real people trying to help real people. Now, our mission, vision, and values are translated into action through our 4 strategic goals, which are reducing barriers to professional licensing, improving regulatory compliance through education and consultation, providing efficient, effective, and timely services, and enhancing the overall customer experience. One example of how we are advancing these goals is last year's successful transition to the Internet Quality Improvement Evaluation System, also known as IQES, which is for long-term care surveys. Through coordinated planning and staff training, we ensured uninterrupted oversight during this transition, while also maintaining critical health and safety inspections statewide. IQES demonstrates precisely how strategic investments and process improvements enable us to deliver more efficient services without compromising on public safety and protection. Now, before we talk about the upcoming fiscal year, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge how far we have come over the past 7 years. LARA has delivered measurable results that improve the lives of Michiganders in every corner of our state. But these accomplishments do not come lightly. What we've accomplished reflects years of sustained partnership between our department and you, the legislature. It reflects continued investment in our people, our programs, our systems, and our services. So the following is just a small snapshot of our collective success over the years. First, we have strengthened firefighter readiness by investing more than $15 million in firefighter training across all 83 counties. And this has supported over 1,000 local fire departments who safeguard our lives and our property. We have improved local liquor law enforcement by providing $73 million to 1,773 local law enforcement agencies, promoting consistent compliance and safer communities. And through expanded court funding, we have provided $1.2 billion to support 133 trial court funding units. This has enabled 1,550 public defenders to carry active caseloads in 2025. We also played a key role in helping to build the new Gordie Howe International Bridge, partnering with our friends at the Michigan Department of Transportation to ensure world-class safety standards and to expand cross-border economic opportunities, not just for Michigan, but also for the United States and Canada. We have reduced barriers to licensure for military families by establishing license reciprocity and fee waivers, which have helped service members, veterans, and their families seamlessly transition into Michigan's workforce. And just last year, we expanded tribal participation in the cannabis industry by finalizing Michigan's first tribal marijuana compacts, which have strengthened state-tribal partnerships and economic opportunities. We have advanced bipartisan regulatory reforms to reduce barriers, modernize licensing requirements, and yes, cut red tape. We have modernized liquor licensing by launching fully online renewals for all licenses and permits, and by processing more than 100,000 renewals while reducing administrative costs. And through the Michigan Public Service Commission, we have approved the first interstate high-voltage transmission project in more than 50 years, which supports 41% growth in renewable energy generation. Together, these efforts reflect sustained, measurable impact regarding public safety, access to justice, physical infrastructure, workforce development, licensing modernization, and regulatory reform. Thanks to your partnership, we are actively working to meet several objectives also in fiscal year 26. Permit me to highlight just a few examples. First, and Representative McKinney, I know this is near and dear to your heart, we are enhancing oversight of Michigan's mobile home communities, which are a critical intersection of housing stability, safety, and consumer protection. With new funding appropriated in fiscal year 26, we are working to accelerate response times to complaints, increase oversight of underperforming and unlicensed parks, and improve regulatory compliance through industry education. This targeted investment helps improve outcomes for residents while also ensuring fairness and accountability for our licensees. Secondly, we are improving timeliness in two key areas: elevator inspections and residential builder complaint resolution. By prioritizing elevating devices within the longest delays, we have reduced the share of devices overdue by more than a year from 46% in fiscal year 21 to just 26% in fiscal year 2025. In addition, over the past few years, the number of open building complaints has decreased by 16%. Last but certainly not least, we are enhancing oversight of Michigan's 348 homes for the aged. Since 2017, this program has been sustained by just 8 healthcare surveyors, despite a 35% increase in licensed HFAs from 2017 to 2024. The new funding in the current fiscal year budget is supporting additional staffing to ensure timely issuance of licenses, completion of routine on-site inspections, and complaint investigations. Additionally, to better educate before we regulate, our team is developing trainings for the Homes for the Aged providers, similar to what we currently offer our nursing home providers. And this slide features a quote that we received from one of our licensees. As these examples show, LARA is already delivering meaningful results with new resources that you have appropriated in fiscal year 26. And we remain committed to building on this momentum. Now, we'll turn our attention to fiscal year 2027, which is Governor Whitmer's 8th and final executive budget recommendation. This budget doubles down on Michigan's long-term priorities, delivering lasting results for Michiganders. Amid national economic uncertainty driven by tariffs and deep federal cuts to programs like Medicaid and SNAP, the fiscal year 27 budget lowers costs, protects access to health care, and helps more families live, work, and play in Michigan. And this is done while maintaining a balanced and fiscally responsible approach. The FY27 budget builds on a strong record of bipartisan progress to address key kitchen table issues that matter the most. It supports good-paying jobs, it fixes our roads, it strengthens public safety, and it ensures that every child can read, eat, and succeed, all while keeping Michigan open for business and continuing to move our state forward. More specifically, LARA's fiscal year 27 budget aligns with all of these priorities. For example, our budget recommendation invests in continued public safety efforts by mitigating the risk of hazardous materials incidents. This advances LARA's mission of protecting people and promoting business, while also furthering the administration's efforts to build a Michigan for all. Jumping into the numbers, LARA's fiscal year 27 recommended budget totals $627.5 million gross, of which $275.4 million is general fund, general purpose dollars. And even though we have a variety of fund sources contributing to our overall budget, most of our department operations at LARA are supported with state restricted funding. Now, this slide further expounds on where general fund dollars are expended within our department. Although 44% of the department's budget is supported with general fund, most of those dollars are distributed to local systems that support indigent criminal defense. Only 14% of LARA's general fund is allocated to support other operations, and those are primarily our oversight of adult foster care homes and homes for the aged, which is facilitated through our Bureau of Community and Health Systems. And followed by that is oversight of acute and continuing care and long-term care facilities, which is facilitated through our Bureau of Survey and Certification. So now it's my delight to turn things over to Dan Horn, who will go over our fiscal year 27 budget recommendations in additional detail.
Thank you, Director Brown. Chair Beeson, Representative McKinney, good to see you again. Thanks for having us. We appreciate your support through the last several budget cycles and look forward to working with you again. I also want to just specifically thank our Bureau leadership and budget teams, as well as our entire financial operations team, for not only helping make this budget presentation possible, but really safeguarding the financial resources of the department through the entire fiscal year, each and every year. Some of the great public servants that we're fortunate enough to work with that Marlon mentioned. Specifically on this slide, we wanted to direct your attention to highlight an investment of $163,000 in one FTE to improve storage tank safety within our Bureau of Fire Services. As mandated within Michigan's Fire Prevention Code and the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, respectively, Michigan's storage tanks program is essential for safeguarding public health and the environment by preventing and identifying leaks that can contaminate crucial groundwater supplies and soil. Furthermore, by regulating the storage of flammable and combustible substances, the Bureau minimizes the immediate risk of fires and explosions that threaten both Michigan residents and property. This funding will support continued corrective actions needed to address audit findings from the Office of Auditor General in April of 2022, which revealed that almost 6,100 storage tanks were overdue for their required triennial inspections under the code. As of January 2026, there are 244 inspections and 183 re-inspections overdue. And while that data demonstrates significant progress in meeting our timeliness standards over the last several years, we also recognize there's still work to do to deliver safe and effective oversight within this program on an ongoing basis. So this investment will bolster the Bureau's ability to complete timely inspections, ensure facility owners correct documented deficiencies promptly, and strengthen protections for both the public health and Michigan's natural resources. Secondly, the governor's recommendation includes $346,000 in 2 FTEs to right-size support for statewide firefighter training, sticking with the Bureau of Fire Services. Governed by the Firefighters Training Council Act, Michigan's firefighter training program is vital for ensuring that all fire service personnel possess the uniform, high-level skills necessary to protect life and property from fire and other disasters that occur in our local communities. With just 4 full-time staff members, a comparison of 10 states here highlights the significant workload that is placed on Michigan's firefighter training division. Michigan ranks highest in the ratio of square miles per training staff member, meaning each staff member supports the largest geographic area among the responding states. Michigan also ranks second highest in both the ratio of firefighters to training staff and the ratio of state population to training staff. These findings indicate that Michigan's training team operates with limited resources relative to the size of the state, its population, and the number of local firefighters that we serve. Adding a 3rd regional training chief as well as a training division manager would enable LARA to strengthen support for regional training centers, local coordinators, and firefighter students, ultimately helping address recruitment and retention challenges that continue to impact the fire service nationwide. Third, this budget includes $491,100 in 3 FTEs to address audit findings and strengthen public services for our residents and licensees. Since 2021, LARA has 39 open audit findings issued by the OAG and the Office of Internal Audit Services. For example, an OAG audit released just in October identified improvements needed to mitigate potential risks to the health, safety, and well-being of hospice patients. LARA is actively implementing corrective actions and follow-up to that finding, including a standard operating procedure for complaint intake, triage, and a new workforce background check system module. We value the role of the OAG because audits help us improve effectiveness and timeliness for the residents and businesses we serve and target the limited resources we have effectively. This investment would provide dedicated, centralized resources to support the resolution of existing audit findings, but perhaps as importantly, proactively identify risks before they impact the public. It would also bring LARA's audit capacity more in line with other departments. For example, the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, which is similar in size to LARA, employs 3 audit managers and 6 audit support staff. Likewise, the Department of Health and Human Services, which faces comparable compliance requirements driven by their guiding legislation, maintains an entire audit division. By adding cost-efficient, centralized support, we can reduce strain on our Bureau staff, improve accuracy and timeliness, and enhance safety for residents in areas that are core to our business: licensing, inspections, complaints, and deficiency follow-ups. This investment ensures that LARA can support compliance expectations while proactively safeguarding public health and safety. To further uphold timeliness and efficiency, this budget proposes $359,300 in 2 FTEs to strengthen the Michigan Tax Tribunal's ability to resolve tax disputes promptly. The tribunal is a quasi-judicial agency that hears tax appeals involving state and local taxes. Currently, the Small Claims Division of the tribunal, which handles primarily residential property tax appeals, faces a backlog of nearly 1,000 cases ready to schedule, with many hearings for cases filed in 2024 delayed here into 2026. This impacts taxpayers who may have to pay additional taxes and our local units of government who are required to issue tax refunds on certain appeal findings. Without additional resources, the tribunal cannot meet its internal goal of resolving cases prior to the following year's filing deadline, and delays will continue to grow. Timely resolution is critical for taxpayers seeking relief, local governments managing their budgets, and Michigan businesses who rely on a predictable tax environment. The governor also recommends $1 million from the Utility Consumer Representation Fund to help the Utility Consumer Participation Board keep pace with available funding and growing demand for grants. The UCPB awards grants to qualifying nonprofit organizations and local units of government to represent the interests of residential utility customers in energy cost recovery proceedings before the Michigan Public Service Commission. Requests for funding from the UCPB have quadrupled since 2022, reflecting the increasing complexity of utility cases that directly impact Michiganders. This investment will allow the board to better align grant awards with demand and continues supporting strong representation for residential customers in front of the Michigan Public Service Commission. Just to demonstrate a bit of the impact, our award of the year, additional funding will enable grantees to participate in more cases before the commission, which helps secure significant savings for ratepayers across Michigan. In calendar year 2024, grants totaling just $2.1 million helped achieve $183 million in savings for residential customers, a return on investment of more than 86-1. Sticking with MPSC's area of the budget, the governor's recommendation includes $500,000 to establish a grant program focused on underground facility safety and education training. This initiative supports the implementation of the MISTIG Underground Facility Damage Prevention and Safety Act as originally intended. Currently, the fund created under this act holds nearly $1 million sourced from civil fines assessed against entities who willfully or knowingly damage or tamper with underground utilities or pipeline markings. Appropriating these funds to MPSC will enable the commission to use them as intended in the statute, supporting education and training programs that promote underground damage prevention. And then finally, I'd like to highlight a critical challenge facing LARA, which I know is not new to either of you either. Currently, 8 separate public acts include sunset provisions for various fees, all scheduled to expire at the end of fiscal year 2027. If those sunsets take effect without legislative action, LARA projects a significant revenue loss, approximately $21.3 million beginning in fiscal year 2028. Removing the sunset dates would allow existing fees to continue, ensuring stable funding for the critical regulatory and licensing functions that we've been discussing, including issuing licenses timely, performing routine inspections, investigating complaints, taking enforcement actions when necessary, and supporting numerous occupational boards and commissions. Without this adjustment, the department's ability to maintain those services and meet statutory responsibilities would be severely impacted. We welcome and encourage continued dialogue on this issue with both of you. And now Director Brown will wrap up our presentation.
Thank you, Dan. Mr. Chair, members of the Appropriations Subcommittee, as you can see, we have a lot of work that we are very proud of. And still, there is a lot of work yet to be done. The fiscal year 27 budget continues to move the needle on our strategic goals, advancing our department mission, and having a positive and lasting impact on the lives of our fellow Michiganders. I want to conclude by thanking all the members of Team LARA for their steadfast and unwavering commitment to public service. It has been the honor of my public service career to lead such an amazing team. We do a lot of important work that contributes to making Michigan a great state to call home. And I say this without reservation, and I'm glad DIFS left the room for this, but LARA is the best department in all of state government. I have been so blessed to be a part of this team for almost 7 years now. But the race is not quite finished. Let's continue building on the progress that we have made together and let's continue providing meaningful results for the residents and businesses that we serve. Thank you again for the opportunity to present our fiscal year 27 budget. We look forward to supporting the remainder of the budget process, and I'm sure we all want to get the budget done on time. With that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to entertain any questions from you or other members of the committee, and thank you again.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I do have a couple questions. You said something on the underground facility damage. You said willingly knowing. So we don't charge people if they didn't, I mean, if they called 811, or what do you mean that by willfully knowing that they are actually disrupting the underground? The facility damage?
We'll double check the statute.
Just because that's concerning, right? Because if you're not willingly knowing and you do it and there's no fine, I'm just kind of curious.
I'm sure the MPSC is happy to address the actual process of the fines in more detail.
Okay.
But we can also follow up with the specifics of,
It just caught my, I'm like, well, if you
The statute.
willfully knowing, if you don't know, then, you didn't know that you had to do that, or, I'm not trying to be mean, but some people just grab a shovel and dig, run a piece of equipment and dig, and they don't think anything of it until so if they didn't know, right, I was wondering if there's a fine assessed to the,
Again, the intent of the request is to be able to train and educate appropriately to avoid damage, especially in underground situations that involve utility lines, other lines to people's homes, critical infrastructure. So with the funds that are in hand appropriated, the commission would be in a position to really enhance that level of education and consult with the construction community, internet service providers, others that are typically digging in these areas to try to prevent damage.
okay. The audit finding, you guys are requesting 3 FTEs, and this is a concern. That's 160. This is for a building too? That's $163,700 per FTE. That's pretty good work to have. I'm not trying to be mean, but if you divide that out, as your state rep sit up here, it's making $71,000. Can we get this in the private industry cheaper, or what?
Thank you for the question, Representative. When we calculate the cost of funding an entire FTE, that does not just include salaries and wages, but also any health insurance costs, any longevity costs that we have to incur. And so that number that you are seeing accounts for equipment costs. It accounts for any other additional benefits that are paid and required under civil service contracts and negotiations. And so that is not just the salary that individual is taking home.
Retirement as well.
Retirement, thank you. I would just like to reiterate, though, this is something that we feel is not only necessary to help the department be proactive, but to really contribute toward our ability to mitigate internal audit and auditor general findings in the future. And that's not just a process that we go through, but these are actually how our programs are working, how we are delivering meaningful services to our residents. If Leo can do this, HHS can do this, we feel that LARA can do this, and it ultimately means less findings that we're having to do and less corrective action plans. We think that this is something that will set the department up for success in the future. So I hope that clarifies your question, and I also hope that this will find your support.
Yeah, we can keep putting more legacy costs. I've never seen a department come in and say, we're efficient, we're running better, we're happy, and, oh, by the way, we don't do mail anymore, and the technology has decreased some of the stuff that we used to do, and we don't no longer need a FTE, because legacy costs, what we're leaving for is our young people to pay for. And it's great when you have the job, but let's look at the people that are going to be paying for these continuing. And everybody can sit up here and tell us, as appropriations, we got to quit looking at until our state is a boom. Like, why do we continue to add more employees to our state legacy? No ifs and buts about it.
Certainly, and Mr. Chair, you and I had a little bit of a conversation about this the other day. I know we have a little bit of a different perspective on FTE counts and things of that nature. I will reiterate that, one, my goal is to demonstrate how we are utilizing the resources that we currently have, and to also show how we can bring added value by adding what I believe is a modest request for both FTEs and funding. You did mention that we're trying to talk about efficiencies, we're trying to talk about automation of processes. LARA is trying to strike that balance between offering traditional services. We answer phone calls just like DIFS. In fact, Representative McKinney, you might actually be pleased to note that we answered 427,472 phone calls last year. We are still
158,000 in licensing for BPL alone.
exactly. So we are still providing in-person services. We're still processing mail. We're still collecting physical payments in person. And at the same time, we are in a big state of 83 counties and 10 million people. We're trying to make sure that people as far as Marquette and Sault Ste. Marie can do their services and can transact business with our department online and remotely and have it be just as effective and even more efficient than coming in person or having to pick up the phone. So we're trying to meet our constituents right where they are, and that requires a bifurcated approach, both of traditional lines of service, phone, mail, in person, as well as online, via web, and even things in the future that we are exploring with some of our additional technology implementation.
And, sir, I'm not in a, it's funny because McKinney and myself and every other legislator have been doing it with 3 people. That's one intern for the entire time I've been here, and we don't ever get an increase. And this is kind of funny that we handle the exact same thing every year, and the Senate has the exact same thing every year. Of course, I have a great team by me as well, and it matters. But once again, it seems like your legislators and your senators do it just fine, and we keep adding more people to the best. And we do. We work really hard. Am I right, sir?
We do, Chairman. I would say this: we have the power of the purse, so we can increase our budgets too.
But increasing when we're moving in the right direction, yes. Decreasing when you're moving stagnant, no. Thank you very much, Director, for all your presentation. I don't. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do.
All right.
I know we're short on time. Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to thank CFO Horn and Director Brown for the presentation. You mentioned John Lewis in your opening remarks, and I just gotta say this, man. Director Brown's my frat brother. I just want to say this: Blue Phi and Go Mob, and appreciate your leadership, Director LARA. My question is, I got a couple questions. One surrounding mobile homes. That's near and dear to my heart, as you mentioned. I've been getting some complaints recently surrounding the water at mobile homes because it's independent and from the major like Gliwa, and everybody's raising their rates, and they have to keep the water on because at the end of the day, if they don't use it, the pipes and stuff don't necessarily work as well. So, with all the increased costs, I would love for you guys to come out and meet with some of our residents because I represent both sides of the 8 Mile border, City of Warren and Northeast Detroit. And we have a lot of mobile home parks, especially north of 8 Mile. If you know anything about the 8 Mile movie and Eminem, I represent Eminem's old trailer park. So I would love to invite the director and LARA to hear some of the residents' concerns. I know we've been working on that for a long time, but yeah, love for you guys to come out.
Thank you, Representative, for the invitation. I will certainly take you up on that. You mentioned Warren. It brought a smile to my face. That's where I grew up. Very familiar with the 8 Mile area as well as many of the mobile home parks in those communities. I will just say 2 things in response to your statement. First is the oversight of mobile homes is definitely complex. It not only involves LARA, but also involves Eagle and the local government jurisdiction. And so the water issue that you referenced is something that is typically under the jurisdiction of Eagle. But when we receive complaints, when we receive issues, we are making sure that if it's something that we can handle, we are taking care of. And if it's something that needs to be handled by another department or the local unit of government, that we're doing that. The other thing I'll say is that there's been a lot of reporting about concerns of conditions in mobile homes, and so we appreciate that those issues are being brought to light. what those reports have also brought to light is that there is a need for policy change. And I'm delighted to say that our policy and legislative affairs team, led by Paige Fultz and her counterparts, have been engaged in hours of meetings and conversations on these very issues. I believe Paige even has a meeting this afternoon with Senator Cherry. Is it Cherry?
Yes.
Okay, with Senator Cherry to continue the work on the mobile home package. And so I say that to indicate that we have a willingness to not only do what we can from the administrative side, but also to work with you and your colleagues to advance meaningful policy change to make the conditions for these residents, often our most vulnerable Michiganders, to make their living conditions better and improve the quality of life.
Thank you, Director. Oh, go ahead.
No, sir. I know that you have more questions. You're going to have to hit me a frat. No.
Oh, okay.
We've got
Okay,
to get done because I have another committee and I don't like to be late for the next committee. Thank you very much for being here and your presentation, and too as well. And Rep. McKinney moves to excuse all the absent members. And with that, this is adjourned.
Thank you, Chairman.